My name is Jessica Sachs. I work in the Vue, Vite, and Vitest testing ecosystem mostly, but my passion is actually component-driven development that is accidentally testable because it's so easy. If you do it right, it's so easy, you will find yourself in a very convenient spot. And I'm going to show you what I mean. So this week I started at PathAI. Previously I was at Cypress. And I want to show you what we're going to build and get into it. So this is the mock that Daniel gave me over Twitter. Very professional. We don't use Figma here. We use Twitter for our mocks. And we're going to walk through the application UI to get some context about where this component is going to go. So I think, one session behind as far as where the code is right now. Can I get a confirmation that this is enough space to see like what code? Can people read this, or do I need it to be bigger?
Maybe just
I can't see
bigger.
Chat. What, bigger?
I think so.
Bigger's
okay, I think that looks great.
Wunderbar. All right, so let's jump through the application. NPM Run dev. And open it up. Boom. It's on the other screen. Let's drag it. All right. So I'm going to zoom through. I'm going to be working fairly fast because it's kind of a big order to build something like this very quickly and make it testable. So if I'm going too fast, somebody interrupt me pretty please. So right now I am, let's see, failing to resolve some dependencies on the newest branch. That makes me sad, but only if I click on the board. Let's take a look at what we got. Cannot resolve kendo drawing. It's okay. Let us make a new thing and just double check that we npm installed everything right. I would find that it was awkward if only half the dependencies were found, but let's see. And now clear the console. Kill this terminal window and do a hard reload because I never trust that it really found it. Huh? No, not happy. It's okay. We'll be fine. So inside of the board, there is a settings menu, and inside of there, that's where we're going to build our label. Or label maker, because a label is a concept on one of our cards. And so on a per board basis, we want to be able to add, remove, and basically CRUD different labels. And one of the really cool things about, let's turn this into a positive, right? One of the really cool things about component-driven development is it doesn't matter if your backend, if somebody else or whatever added a dependency you can't get to work on your machine, you're actually unblocked. And I'm going to show you what that means. So even though the application is messed up for me right now, I can continue working. And so let's go and do npm run. I'm going to show you the task I added ahead of time. I did a little bit of work ahead of time to get TypeScript compiling nicely. I added 2 lines in the package JSON, test component, and test component CI. I'm using Chrome Canary because Chrome 102 has some issues that have been
just
fixed.
Quick question, Jess.
Yes,
do you want to resolve those issues in the thing, or do you just want to keep going? They won't be a problem.
I mean, I don't think it will be a problem, and like,
okay.
I think actually, let's see, because one of the things that I love about component-driven development in an isolated fashion is that you don't take your entire application with you when you when you try to develop. So you can actually avoid a lot of blocking issues, things like GraphQL and stuff like that. You can work around endpoints not existing, entire endpoints not existing. So.
Wow.
Awesome. I want to see if that theory is true with this application.
Awesome.
And then if I'm wrong, then we can fix it.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks.
All right. So I'm going to execute npm run test component, which is going to open Cypress component testing. I'm going to kill our I'm going to kill our other server. Boop. So this is going to start up our Vite dev server. And we don't have any specs right now. This is known as the Cypress Launchpad, and if we wanted to switch browsers, it would let me switch that here. And it also tells me what the folder name I'm in is and what the branch name I'm in is. So I want to git checkout be feat label maker. I like that name, label maker. And you can see the branch name changed here, and then also over here if GraphQL had updated. It didn't. Let's make our first spec. So I like to put my specs sibling to my code. So inside of source components, I think the first thing we'll do, if we look at our mock, is I want to make this label. So let's look at the naming convention in the project and see what we're going to name our first component. So we have the drawer, the navbar, and the alerts when we're talking about things, I guess, that are probably, there's only one of, right? And so we have task label, which I think I made last night when I was testing this out. So I think I already made the component, but you don't need to. Let's name it task label. .sci.tsx. I'm going to use tsx for this. You don't have to. If you didn't, you would just use the standard Vue test util syntax. We'll talk about that in a minute. It generates a spec for me. I'm going to run that spec. And it doesn't do anything, and that's correct. So let's open the file by clicking on the name of the file we just did. Oh, apparently I've never used this on this computer before, so it's going to ask me what my editor is. I'm going to tell it it's VS Code, and then it'll open it up here. And so here's our test. You can see the little Cypress logo with the test symbol. And it didn't format it for the linter. That's okay. I'll run ESLint. I hit, a hotkey for that. And I'm going to import task label. The first thing whenever you're trying to test or mount is always to make sure that you can import the file, because most errors happen on import, because that'll drag in our dependencies if there are any. So if we were to have issues with that kendo bug we got when I first loaded the application, this is when we would find out. We're going to mount task label. We're actually not even going to mount it. We're just going to say expect true to be true to get a smoke test. Great. Nice. And it doesn't mount anything. That's cool. And now we're going to mount something, and if we're lucky, something will work. Oh. Whoops. Hello. Nope. I did not do it right. Let's look at the code. Right, in Vue 3, the default slot needs to be defined explicitly. Perfect. And it's red and pink. So this is where I left it last night. At this point, I have a component, and I have a environment to start my development. And our goal is going to be to maybe get the test out of the way as much as possible and start looking at the mocks. So I make a small, tiny little sandbox over here using Cypress. And then I have the mocks on the right. And I'm going to use the entire real estate of my screen to have what I'm supposed to be building, my code, and what is actually rendering. So usually on this side, I would have Figma, but because we use Twitter for our mocks right now, this is I'm not actually ragging on this. I think it's great. I will also then use the screenshot tool to measure, which is like what we used to do in the old days before we had Figma. There are a lot of reasons why that's a bad idea. But let's make our label. So our task label first should have a slot. Or let's see. Let's switch this to a div, the most accessible tag. Don't get in the habit of using divs. And we're going to do it hard-coded first. So we're going to have some text. This is probably going to be a value. Let's say it's going to be like a value prop. So, and then we're going to start styling it. I like to start with styles first before I design the API, and I hard code all my text. So I'm going to say that this thing is going to have a max width of, this is 400, I think I zoomed in on this. Yeah, I think like, I don't know, 180 is probably right. So let's say a max W of 180 pixels. I have a lot of dev tools enabled, so if there's something that looks really cool, there's probably a VS Code plugin for it. And then I always set a background of like red to start so I can see everything that's happening. Great. So the next thing I'm noticing is that the text is white. So I'm going to say font white. And then I'm going to say like, there's always, no matter if there's an icon or not, there's always a gap here of like 50 pixels. But more specifically, there's probably a margin of about 18 pixels. So I'm going to say mx for margin x is going to be, let's say 2 to 4. And my, which is margin, sorry, padding because we want to include the background color. px for py, let's say 2. And we'll notice this little buddy. I'm going to zoom in so we can see him better, even though it's going to be, even though it's going to be a little off. All right, somebody broke Zoom. Also, the font didn't change colors, which is not cool. That makes me sad. Is it supposed to be text white, not font white? I think so. Perfect. I think also font should be medium, not light, and I think right now it's light. The reason it's not updating immediately like Vue is because I have my editor setting to be on focused instead of on delay, or else it would be a little bit faster. I'm gonna drag a little bit more here. And it's hard to see all the class names with Tailwind when the font's so big. So I feel a little bit lost, but let's make the corners rounded. And let us, one second, on save. I'm going to change my editor settings because I don't like to switch between windows. I just like it to automatically update. Settings. It's the first thing. After delay. Great. Okay, after delay. Perfect. That'll help us go a little faster. Great. So now that the padding's going for this, let us look at how to create this space between the icon and the label. So I'm probably going to make 2 spans because I want them to behave kind of inline. Again, if I was doing this in any slower capacity, I would be looking at how to make this accessible, and I'm not right now. Whenever I don't know how a project uses icons, I always add an emoji instead of the icon while I'm working, and then I figure out how to sub in the icon later. So let's do a check mark here. That looks good. Perfect. And now I can kind of eyeball the spacing of our little high priority guy. I feel like this should be bigger, that this label should be bigger. Fonts, text large? No, font large. I'm gonna do this. Font size 2 round, just so I can like see it a little bit better. 1.1. Very nice. Okay, and so I think it's a little awkward that there's no spacing. So let's do margin right, so we get some spacing between the icon and the label. It looks like it's an equal over here. So we're gonna do margin right 2. What we've learned so far as we're developing is that this is gonna look awkward if the label is too big. And so one of the first things I would do, probably going to just do the width right now. Let's say 220 pixels. One of the first things I would do if I were to productionize this label is handle text overflow and probably add a truncate class onto here. Tailwind gives you this, and it allows you to make sure that you get the dots if the label's too big. But we're not going to worry about that right now. So now we have something that is in the general shape, except we don't have a trash can icon. So class MR2 on the right here. And let's switch this out to be a trash can so we get an approximation of what this is going to look like. That looks terrible. Let's see, fonts. Right. I didn't remember what the font size thing is for Tailwind. And then we can see that looks not great. I think margin left auto, we'll put this on the, yeah. There we go. We'll put that on the left. And then this thing should be growing. And what I do at this point is I open up over here the dev tools, make it a little bigger, and make sure that that this guy's behaving like I want it to. And I actually want high priority to grow to the contents of the page. So I'm gonna say this is gonna be flex grow, and then double check that that's true. Great. So now high priority is taking up most of the space. And this will be important once we start adding, once we honestly either make this a slot, which I'm tempted to do, or make it a value. I think I'm going to make it a value. And now I'm going to start defining the API. So define props value. I'm not going to use vModel because I don't expect this to like change dynamically very often. If we wanted like the meh over here to update as the label was typing, I would use vModel. But because it's fairly static, I'm probably going to define props of value, and you can see nothing is showing up, and it's saying it's missing the required prop of value. I'm going to pause really quick and step back because I have about 5 minutes until I have a hard stop. What I feel like it demonstrated was that when you're stuck due to compilation errors, you are able to kind of eject out into a sandbox like Storybook or Cypress, and you're able to continue your workflow. And then whenever, Daniel hops on and fixes the issues I was having, he helps me out, right? I have confidence that the work I did, because I was able to continue working, that will just work if I put it in a new environment. Let's see.
I get you back, Jessica.
Yeah, I know you do. So instead of hello, and you can see TypeScript is yelling at me. It's like, you're missing value, property value is missing, but it's required. We're going to do value is going to be hello. Very nice. Hello. And then we're going to do, I'm going to show you why I actually like JSX in this. So check this out. We're going to use a fragment, and people who've used React will be like, yeah, fragments. People who haven't will be like, why would you use JSX? And this is what I'm about to show you. We're going to make 3 of these. And then actually instead of a fragment, we're going to use a div. And then we're going to use Tailwind inside this. And we're going to say we want it to be a class divide y1. And then we're going to add a margin of 2 on here. And you can, nah. Let's do like margin of like, margin of 20, not margin right of 20. And divide y of like, I don't know, 4. Spacing, space, y4. Nice. And so let's try out medium priority and meh. And now next thing you'll see, high, medium, priority, and meh. Next thing we got going on is we're gonna assign a, we can see like this doesn't look like the, oh, see, overflow doesn't look too bad. Height. Next thing we probably want to do is be able to assign a color. I would say color should be able to be any CSS color. There's no easy TypeScript way, I don't think, to do that. Violet, and let's say like color like yellow, I don't know. And now Vue will tell us, let's make Vue tell us something. I'm going to refresh this with R. Vue will say, hey, aw, no, Vue is swallowing this, actually. Velar is swallowing this. Color should be a string. And I'm going to vbind color onto here. So style is going to become a computed property. And we're going to say background color is going to be whatever color is. And this doesn't let us use tailwind, which is kind of a bummer. There's a way to fix that. I'm not going to talk about it. And I think we're going to do a default of like gray 300. Color is going to become optional. And tailwind should take over if there's nothing passed in. Otherwise, let's see. Did I do it right? Oh, that looks beautiful. Guys, this is accessibility. This right here. Oh gosh, that's a mess. This, you know, gives us one feature we should probably implement, which is like changing between black and white text based on the contrast ratio, but that's actually kind of hard to do. So let's just change the fixture really quick. Instead of yellow, to use dark yellow. Doesn't exist as a CSS color, I guess, but we know the fallback works. So this would be the error case. Last thing I would do, and we don't have time for questions, which is kind of a bummer, is I would write a test. Now that I know that this relatively works, I would probably make sure that I can click on the trash can and that the label would go, or that I would get an emitted event to delete. The way I would do that would be defining a method using define emits on the label. I always forget the syntax for define emits, but I'm going to look it up in the code base with define emits. And I'm going to copy paste somebody else's wonderfully typed code. Boom, events. Nice. And say E on delete. There's no event here that I care to say. And then I'm going to make this trash can actually a button now that I know I want to click on it. Button. And I'm going to say data test ID. This is not the best way to find things in tests. I talk about this in other talks I do. If you're interested to know what the best way is, try to follow me on things. And then I'm going to say on delete, which Velar has now picked up, on delete spy. And I'm going to define a spy with Cypress. Const on delete spy is going to be size spy as delete spy. And then I'm going to define a selector, const trash selector is going to be data test ID clear label. I believe that's what I called it. Let's check in the source code really quickly. Clear label, not delete label. But I'm going to let Cypress fail, actually, to show you what the error state looks like. Wait, did I call it? Oh, I'm going to make Cypress fail anyway. Delete label. Let's pretend like I messed it up. It'll fail out and tell me that it didn't find it. But it did find it, and it told me it found 3 of them. So let's click it, and then we will get the delete spy and say it should have been called. and then I made ESLint do it. Because we got 3 of them, sci is like, hey, cyclic can only be called on a single. Your subject contained 3, so it didn't try to click on all 3. So let's grab the first trash selector, because we really don't care. We just want to make sure one was called. And because we haven't implemented that yet with emits, it didn't work. So let's go ahead and make this test pass. And say, when you click on the button, $emit delete label. Oh, delete, not delete label. Perfect. So now you have a component test that tests that you have an emitted event. It has 2 props, value and color, and you can click this as many times as you want, and the spy will be like, hey, you clicked the spy for delete multiple times. If we were to productionize this and do the entire mock, I would say that the form should control what labels are added, and that, you know, this is a presentational component that only tells you when things are happening to it, like when you click delete. That's what I got. And yeah.
Thank you very much, Jessica, for being here. We know that we run out of time. That's why there's no time for question. No. It's our fault. No problem. So thank you very much for your information. A lot of questions are there, but most probably people can reach out to you on Twitter, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm very active on Twitter. Send people my way. I'm happy to do a follow-up. If this wasn't day 3 on my new job, I would be around, but I'm
absolutely. Yeah, that was awesome, and I love that we see that the thing that the UI, the new UI of Cypress in action, the one that we talked about a month ago, if you remember, in Vue.js Amsterdam. Yeah, so thank you very much.
Yeah.
And it was a pleasure having you.
Thank you. All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks.